Because the ego would like to take my mind back. Okay, so we are in chapter 2, section 4, and we are at the end of it, and then we're going to go into section 5. All right. Okay. So, we're talking about fear, getting a lesson in fear. And we learned last week that fear comes when you have a split mind, you have a split will. What you want to do and what you're doing are two different things. You have a split will, you have a split mind. And that when your mind is split, like, I want these two things, but they're different, or I want something, or that something I want I'm not doing. When your mind is split like that, you haven't made up your mind yet. You haven't made up your mind what you want. You haven't made up your mind. And so you're doing two conflicting things at once. And it causes fear. That's what we were reading about last week. Okay? And then, so now it's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So now these next two paragraphs, excuse me, are really just a recap of what we did last week. Okay? And what it says earlier in the section. So it says, remember that whenever there is fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. Whenever there is fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. You haven't made up your mind. And when you haven't made up your mind, then your mind is split. I haven't made up my mind, so my mind is split. Right? And then, of course, I have erratic behavior that follows my split mind. Right? So, he says, your will is split. And when your will is split, then your behavior becomes erratic. Oh, that's where my erratic behavior comes from.
So what does that mean? What is erratic behavior?
Erratic means inconsistent. Inconsistent.
Craziness.
Well, you know, one part of you wants love and one part of you wants fear, and you haven't made up your mind. So one day you go with love, and then the next day you go with fear, then you go with love, and then you go with fear, and your behavior is very erratic. And people are like, I just don't know which one of you I'm going to meet when we get together. Sorry. You know, so that's where fear comes from. I haven't made up my mind, and so I haven't made up my mind what I want, love or fear. And so my mind is split. And so now my behavior is erratic, because I'm going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in what I want, love or fear. And he's saying that that's where fear comes from, that where your behavior and your will is out of accord, that split, that's where fear comes from. So interesting, you haven't made up your mind. Fear is, I haven't made up my mind. So this situation which I'm feeling fear in, I haven't made up my mind. I haven't decided whether it's for love or fear. This thing where I have fear, I haven't made up my mind yet what it's for, love or fear. I haven't made up my mind yet whether I'm going to forgive or attack. I haven't made up my mind. And that's why I have fear about it. That's why I'm afraid in this situation. Wow, interesting. Fear comes from not making up your mind. That's an interesting thought about fear, huh? And it also makes sense now where my erratic behavior comes from.
You think that kind of might underlie? I know anytime we think we don't know, we experience anxiety. You know, just to say I don't know is.
That's right.
It's probably that split thing that you know, it's about making up our mind thing.
Exactly. And so instead of saying, oh, I'm so afraid of this relationship, I'm so afraid of this problem, we should be saying, oh, I haven't made up my mind yet about this person. I haven't made up my mind yet about this relationship. Wow. Interesting.
So I would say, I mean, if you're experiencing indecisiveness, I would say that it's to say that that results in fear. To me, that would say it results in confusion or bewilderment, and you're like, wow, what is going on? What am I doing?
Yeah, sounds like
And you're like, your mind's like a whirlwind. So it's hard to think that is fear.
That's right.
It's hard to relate.
That's right. Exactly. Hard to connect my wanting and my doing being out of accord with what's giving rise to my fear.
It's kind of like the fear of growth and leaving what you knew behind, and the fear of the void, and not knowing what's going to come of it.
Exactly.
Oh, so, yes.
Leaving your comfort zone.
Exactly. You haven't made up your mind to go for it in faith yet. Haven't made up my mind. I've heard, I'm kind of wavering. Should I trust God? Should I not? Should I trust what the Course says or not? I haven't made up my mind yet. Obviously. But you're right, but that's what it is that we haven't made up our mind about the most. Right. Are you going to use the truth that you heard, or are you going to not? We haven't made up our mind yet. And so sometimes we have all the peace and the miracles that come from making the decision for truth, and then sometimes we don't have those results. We have the opposite results.
So it sounds like we haven't made up our minds because of fear.
What I hear as a saying is the fear comes because you haven't made up your mind. In other words, you haven't made a decision. You haven't made a decision.
It's happening on more than one level a lot of times. I mean, not only I haven't decided on the goal, I'm also trying to figure out if this means will bring me to my
That's
goal.
exactly right.
So I'm split about how do I get there, and if I can get there, do I even want to go there?
That's right. I haven't made up my mind about, if it's something that's going to be helpful or harmful. Yeah, beautiful.
When you
Okay.
make up your mind, then you enter a holy instant right at that point.
Exactly. That's exactly right. When you make up your mind, the fear is abolished. And then all of a sudden you see correctly, and then you behave not erratically, but effectively. When the fear is gone, you behave effectively. When the fear is there, you behave erratically, and people are afraid of you. I just don't know what she's going to do. All right, so we're talking about the erratic behavior that comes from fear, which comes from not having made up your mind and being split-minded about what you want. Correcting that at the behavioral level, correcting that my erratic behavior. If you're going to try to correct your erratic behavior on a behavioral level, I'm going to try to be better at this, right? If you're going to try to correct it at a behavioral level, all you're going to do is shift the error from one form to the other, okay? If you're going to try to eradicate your erratic behavior behaviorally, you can't fix your erratic behavior behaviorally. I'm having to tell myself.
So then how do you fix it?
Okay, so I have erratic behavior, and I feel really guilty about it. I really do, because people perceive me as undependable and inconsistent, and all those things. And as we all need that correction, we need the correction of the guilt that we have about our erratic behavior. And now we need to go, the erratic behavior isn't my problem. It's that I haven't made up my mind what's going to be true. The truth or my ego. All right. Okay, so I don't want to correct at the behavioral level. All right. So then it says, it is possible to reach a state in which you bring your will under my guidance without much conscious effort. That would be nice. But this implies habit patterns which you have not developed dependably as yet. I love that sentence. It is possible to reach a state in which you bring your will under my guidance without much conscious effort, but But doing that implies habit patterns which you have not developed dependably as yet. I haven't developed the habit dependably as yet of what? Of bringing my will under Spirit's guidance. I haven't made it into a dependable habit. Where anything happens, I go, well, Spirit's not forgot for me. I haven't made it a dependable, I haven't developed that habit dependably as yet. Placing my will, what I think, under Spirit's guidance. It's not a habit yet. It's like somebody calls you up and goes, dummy, remember to ask Holy Spirit to decide, forgot for you? And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Right. It's not a habit yet, okay? But it is still possible to bring your will under Spirit's guidance, unconsciously. That's nice.
So we could help ourselves. A habit is just repetition. If through our little daily life, we just, what should I do here?
Mm-hmm.
How should I see this?
Mm-hmm.
About every small little thing.
Exactly.
Just get in the habit of, it's kind of a surrendering kind of habit of listening.
Exactly.
That's
what a habit
develop
means.
that.
Exactly. A habit can only come from repetition.
Mm-hmm.
So your indecisiveness is also a habit.
Indeed. Absolutely. A very bad habit.
Yeah.
Probably the most destructive habit we have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Because when I think of my fear, I don't tend to think of my fear as, oh, I just haven't made up my mind yet. It absolutely does not seem like that at all. It does not seem like that's what's going on. It seems like my fear is about what's happening to me. Hello? My fear is about what's happening to me. And he's saying, actually, it's because you haven't made up your mind. Wow. Okay. Then it says, okay, and if you haven't made up your mind, that means your mind is split. That means your will is split. And if your will is split and your mind is split, then your behavior will be erratic. Correcting your erratic behavior at the behavioral level will shift your error from the first to the second. The second what? The second type of strain described above, but will not obliterate the fear. It is possible to reach a state in which you bring your will under my guidance without much conscious effort. But this implies habit patterns which you have not developed dependably as yet. God cannot ask more than you will. The strength to do comes from your own undivided will to do. I'll say it again. The strength to do comes from your own undivided desire to do. There is no strain in doing God's will as soon as you recognize that God's will is also your own. All right.
So my basic conflict there is I haven't made up my mind that all I want is God's will.
That's exactly right. That's the one thing I haven't made up my mind about the most.
And he's making it less fearful here by saying, it's just the same as yours.
That's right. It's what you really want. Trust me,
It's
says
like
God.
the ego attacking the fact that you want something different. You want trust. You want trust in the Holy Spirit. And so that's where the paradigm shift comes in, the stuck in the middle
Yes.
kind of feeling.
That's the thing that your ego's trying to fight the hardest.
Yeah.
You know? Because
You're winning that.
you really do want the will of God. You really do want what God wants for you. You really do. You just have forgotten it because your mind has become split by listening to the ego. You've been listening to the ego also. You know, and so now your mind is split. What does that mean to say I have a split mind? It means I have the things I want are opposite. I want opposing things. I want fear and I want love. And I have not made up my mind about which one is the one that I want. Wow. And so he's saying that once you realize that the only thing you want is what God wants, God's plan for you, God's plan for your happiness is the only thing you want, he says, when that happens, then there's no more strain. There's no more strain. No more strain between what? Between what you want to do and what you are doing. There's no more strain. There's no more internal conflict. I'm so conflicted inside myself. I want to do this, but then what I really do is that. I really want to do that, but what I'm going to do is this. Strain. The strain of being out of accord with your own self, where your mind, your will, and your behavior are out of accord because you're always doing what you don't want to do and not doing what you do want to do. Wow, my mind is split.
So in this, I can't make up my mind because I'm still seeing some value in things of fear.
Exactly. And when that moment comes and I realize, oh, all I really want to do, all I really want is God's plan, God's will, God's truth. That's all I want. I just remembered that's all I want. All of a sudden now your will is not split. You've made up your mind. You've made up your mind. All I want is God's plan. All I want is God's truth. All I want is God's will. And then it says, and then the strain is gone. Whee! Wouldn't that be nice to experience a little vacation from strain? A straincation.
How will you know what is God's will, like in a situation or in a relationship or with a person? How will you know, like, it's your ego convincing you, or it's how?
Well, first you ask for it, and by just your even asking for it guarantees that you will receive it, meaning you will recognize it at some place and some time. Especially if you keep asking and keep asking and keep asking, and every day, what is your will for me? What is your plan? What is your plan for me? So you can be sure you will get it, you will be answered, if you want it. Wow. Okay, so I could end the strain of this situation that I'm in right now. You know the one. I could end the strain right now if I would just make up my mind about what I want to come of it and what I want to happen in it and what it's for. And it is for the will of God. It's for God expressing His love through it into the world. And I make up my mind about that once and for all, and then strain gone from that situation. And you get God's plan, and you get God's answer, and it rearranges your situation to match the truth now. All right, I love it. There's no strain in doing God's will once you recognize that that's what you want. And it's funny that it takes so long to get us to recognize that what we want is what God wants for us. It's like it takes us a while to recognize that. All right. So then it says, the lesson here is quite simple, but particularly apt to be overlooked. I will therefore repeat the lesson, urging you to listen. What's the lesson? Only your mind can produce fear. Only your mind can produce fear. And your mind produces fear whenever your mind is conflicted in what it wants. And I'm going to read that again. Your mind produces fear whenever your mind is conflicted in what it wants, thus producing inevitable strain because willing and doing become discordant. This cannot be corrected by better doing, but it can be corrected by higher willing. All right. So that last few lines was the perfect recap or summation of that. Only your mind can produce fear, and your mind only produces fear when it's conflicted about what it wants.
And then what was the last sentence?
And then the last sentence was, which produces inevitable strain, because what you want to do or what you're thinking is now discordant from what you're doing. In other words, your thought and your behavior are discordant.
And then what was the last sentence?
And then it says, And you can't correct that by better doing.
That's the
Yeah,
changing in behavior.
Exactly, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
What I feel so guilty about is my words and my actions being so discordant, right? And producing erratic behavior. And he's saying that that can't be corrected by trying to do better. He said, it cannot be corrected by better doing. You just need to be doing some better doings. It cannot be corrected by better doing. I'm going to make myself more consistent. I'm going to make myself more consistent. He says, the only way that erratic behavior, split mind, can be corrected is by higher willing, not better doing. Not better doing, higher willing is the answer. That's the only thing that can correct your erratic behavior.
Well, if you're stuck in erratic behavior, what is better doing? You know,
Say that again?
If you're stuck in erratic behavior, what is better doing? What do you?
Right.
What is
There's
your
nothing you
perception?
can do. When you're stuck
You
in
don't
erratic
have-
behavior, the best you can do is go ping, pong, ping,
Back and
pong,
forth.
ping, pong, ping, pong. Now I'm happy and loving, now I'm angry and sad. Now I'm happy and loving, now I'm angry and sad. And then real busy when I'm in the sad and angry part. Right? So I'm asking for correction of that. And the only way to correct that erratic behavior is not better doing, but higher willing. Like, okay, I am willing to have this corrected for me.
I am willing to let go and let God.
I am willing to let go and let God. I am willing to receive the truth that I do not know, obviously, right now. Higher willing, okay?
Is that the
Higher
answer?
thinking.
That lady brought up a really good point. You can ask for God's will, but how do you know what it is? That's the first thing we do, is we try to decide, was this it or not? We judge it, and if we're in a split mind, there's no way we could see if it was or not.
We very often
It's a
mistake
hopeless
it.
task. So do we just kind of on faith, would you please give me your guidance, and then just go not really knowing what it is? Otherwise, we'll just add that to our
That's
conflict.
exactly right. So truly, the Course does say, if it wasn't for Holy Spirit basically doing it for you, there would be no chance that you could even accept the will of God. Because you're exactly right. I mean, the way we've so identified with our ego, when the truth and when liberation comes our way, we run screaming. Or we project heavily.
Well, that's what I was saying, we can ask for it, but if we wait till we're sure that's it to do anything, we'll never do anything.
Exactly.
Because that's part of the split.
Right. But the Course does assure us that if you do want it for real, that nothing, and I mean nothing, could stop you from recognizing it and accepting it. If you really, really, really want it, above all else. If you're single-minded about it.
So you need to realize, once you've asked, no matter which road you take, it's taking you where you need to go.
Thank you. Well said. All right. Okay, so the only way our erratic behavior can be corrected is by higher willing. Okay, that's what it said. What is higher willing? What does that mean? It means this: the correction for lack of love. Okay. This is what it means by the higher willing that can only correct it. The first corrective step in the higher willing, the first corrective step in this strain, or out of this strain, is to know first that this strain, this conflict, is an expression of fear. That's the first corrective step. Say first to yourself, this is an expression of fear. This is an expression of fear. Okay? First thing I need to say to myself about whatever strain I'm going through right now. Then I'm supposed to say to myself that, well, I'm experiencing strain, so I must have somehow willed not to love. I must have somehow wanted not to love. I must have somehow wanted not to love. Or the fear which arises from behavior will conflicts could not have arisen. And then once you do that, then the whole process of correction is just nothing more than a series of pragmatic steps in the larger process of accepting the atonement, or we would say the remedy. Wow, okay, so he just ran down, he's running down the process, the fear eradicating process, the fear correction process, the erratic behavior correction process, the erratic behavior guilt correction process. Wow. So first we say that it's fear, and I am afraid because I somehow chose not to love. I somehow didn't want to love. I didn't want to love, that's for sure. I didn't want to love in that moment. That is exactly what happened. And I must have somehow not wanted to love in that moment. And then fear came up, and it says that which arises from it. And then the fear came up, which arises from behavior will conflict. Oh, that's what happened. All right. And once you accept that, then all the rest of the steps of the correction of fear are easy, simple. Once you accept this is fear, and I must have somehow chosen not to love. Gee, I wonder how. And then my behavior and my will became out of accord. And that's how this happened. What if you said that to yourself?
I think it's helpful too to figure out why you would ever choose not to love.
Exactly, that's
And
the funny
it's
part.
always because I thought love would hurt me.
Exactly,
We believed something that wasn't true.
that's exactly right.
Is it choosing to love, or is it choosing love?
Uh-huh. Well, my son, that is a very deep question. Say it again.
I was just wondering, is it choosing to love something, or is it choosing love?
Yeah.
Or, are you fearing love, or to be loved, or are you fearing to love, or is it just, we chose fear instead of love, in whatever form it is, either coming or going?
Yeah. To me, it's like, I chose to forget that I am love. And because I thought that would somehow, get me something that, that fear wouldn't. I mean, I chose not to love because I thought fear would get me something better. What a dummy I was. I chose not to love thinking that if I didn't love and I was angry or sad or hurt, that I would get more somehow. I would, I get more, really. And in this world, it does seem like that's true. It does seem like in the world, in special relationships, that, the more guilt you give, the more you get.
So then we think love will deprive us
Exactly.
or cause loss.
That's right. And anger will get me something more. That's how I somehow chose not to love. I somehow chose not to love. So, okay. So, when you somehow choose not to love, and then you become afraid, and then your behavior reflects your fear, because it's erratic and nonsensical, then you need a remedy. You need a remedy. I need a remedy. I need the remedy. I need a remedy. Okay, here's the remedy for that. First, know that this is fear. The situation I'm terrified in is fear. And then the next thing that I'm supposed to tell myself is, this fear is coming from my lack of love. This fear is coming from my lack of love. This fear is coming from my lack of love. This fear is coming from my lack of love. Somehow I chose not to love. Okay, that's step 1 and 2. Third step, to remember that the only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Oh yeah, the only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Do you tell yourself that? The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. You tell yourself that. And then perfect love is the atonement, or perfect love is the remedy. Perfect love is the remedy. If lack of love is the problem, then perfect love is the remedy. And that is the practical steps in the undoing of fear. That is the undoing of fear process. How to undo fear. Also, how to correct for erratic behavior. Boy, we could all use some of that, couldn't we?
This
That's the
lack of
process.
love. Usually we set it up, or our egos set it up where, well, do I love myself or do I love them?
Right.
But in truth,
That's right.
the lack of love is for you and them simultaneously. Or perfect love loves you and them simultaneously.
Exactly.
That's where your error lies.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
It's not, do I love them or me? It's, do I love us or keep us in fear?
Exactly. Do I choose perfect love right now or special love, which ain't no love? Right. Which am I going to choose?
That
To
occurred to
love.
me.
Right.
Or not to love.
Am I going to choose perfect love or no love?
And that is the question.
And that is the question
Very simple.
that determines every iota of my physical experience, in part and total.
And pretty much our ego that is so separate, it can never see an answer that would love both of you.
That's exactly
That
right.
has to come from spirit. We can't even
Yes.
perceive it without it.
We cannot conceive of perfect love. That is true.
You ask, he will show you how to love both of you.
Exactly. And so together we're asking for perfect love, not demanding they give it to us upon pain of death. You will give me perfect love.
So this deciding isn't about deciding what to think or believe or do. It's really just deciding who to listen to,
Yeah.
just
The
who
only-
to ask.
Exactly. Again, the only thing I'm undecided on is, am I going to love or not? Am I going to love or somehow choose not to love? I don't know how it happened. They made me. That's how it happened that I didn't choose for love. They made me not choose for love.
Well, I see a key, like, you know, major shift in all. I mean, you can identify your ego based on how you're feeling and call out your fear, and then you ask for a correction. But you can stumble sometimes in asking for that correction on a behavior level as opposed to
Yes.
a thought level.
That's right.
Whereby you just keep repeating the pattern. I mean,
Exactly.
it's almost like there's a book called Creative Visualization, Dr. Wayne, and it talked about like, well, you can ask for whatever or you know, visualize what it is that you want, but you should visualize, you know, make sure you know what you want, and it better not be in a form. Because it's going to come back, you know, you're going to get fooled all the time. I see that same kind of
Nice.
analogy right here,
Very
whereby
nice.
you know, and I, you know, sometimes we do meditations in here based on a specific issue, person, incident, form, which is really part of a pattern. I mean, if you're experiencing some kind of pain, it's pretty much tied to a pattern that you've been experiencing that pain, whether it's disguised all the time and you never recognize it as the same thing. Well, sometimes you do, but often not. So
Habits.
therefore, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of like inventory to do to try to correct that. But if you correct it at the
Thought
thought
level.
level, that's where you really start breaking the pattern.
Exactly.
And when you see the pattern,
Yeah. So you can't break a pattern behaviorally.
right.
Ooh. That's,
Right, I
that's
mean,
about to put a
and
lot of
sometimes
people out of
I'm right.
business.
I wish I didn't do that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, God, please,
I
I
need-
don't want to do
yes.
that anymore.
I need a coach to help me behave differently.
Right.
That just struck me as funny.
Yeah.
Will you be my behavioral coach? Sure. Sorry,
you
all
know-
I can pay you is in resentment, sorry.
You know, modern psychology is like heavily into like behavioral modification,
That's right.
you know.
Most
Sure,
of it.
you know that.
I mean,
That's what it's all about.
changing your thinking, your thoughts produce, neurologically speaking, your thoughts change the chemical compound of your brain.
Exactly.
Your thoughts change physically something on this earth.
Exactly. And change even what your eyes can see, what you can perceive.
Well, there is a school of thought that change the behavior changes the thinking,
That's right, absolutely.
which is contrary to what we're hearing here.
Pretty much.
So is often our mistake in this is we stay so involved in the healing or solving process. We should be asking them to let it go rather than trying to figure out what to do, what to say, what's love, what's God's will. All of these things that we do,
Yeah,
this is more say, okay, help,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
try to open yourself and not figure it out yourself, because that's how you got there in the first place.
That's right. Exactly. And so if you want to, behave effectively, then you have to go to the level of, okay, well, at least I'll start with, this is an expression of fear. It came because I chose not to love. The only way to remedy what comes from a lack of love is perfect love, and so I choose perfect love right now. I don't know what perfect love is. I have no idea what perfect love is, and I ask for it. I asked for it. I asked for perfect love. I asked for what perfect love would show me. I asked for what perfect love would give me. I asked for what perfect love would do. And then after you've done that, and then had a few moments of silence, God forbid, then go back to your making up your little plan. Then you go, well, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do it. But don't do that until after you've done the real correction, the real corrective remedy. This is the remedy. It's corrective. It corrects mistakes. It's like our best friend, truly. Truly our best friend. You remember that, you apply the remedy once you recognize that you didn't choose love. And how do you know you haven't chosen love? Because you feel some kind of strain. Something feels really off. Strain. You feel strain. You notice, you think about that with with negative emotions, or what we call negative emotions. There's a real strain feeling to them. And in, most of our experiences, there's a lot of strain because I'm not doing what I really want to do. And the thing I want to do, I'm not doing. But the thing I don't want to do, I'm doing. And a lot of it. And so I'm always experiencing this inner strain between what I want and what I'm doing. Or what I want to do and what I'm doing. All right. So that's the corrective formula for undoing fear undoing erratic behavior at the causal level. All right, and undoing fear at the causal level. How are we doing on time? All right. All right. Okay. Then he says, we have emphasized that the miracle, which is the expression of the remedy, the miracle is the expression of the remedy. The miracle is always a sign of real respect from the worthy to the worthy. This worth is re-established by the remedy, the atonement. It is obvious then that when you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need the remedy. When you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need the remedy because you have done something loveless, because you willed without love, you wanted without love. Wow. Isn't that powerful?
Can you kind of summarize that?
I'm going to say it again. When you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need the remedy. I need the remedy. I am afraid. I need the remedy. I am afraid. I need a remedy. For what? for having chosen lovelessly today. I need the remedy for my fear. Wow. And he says, this is precisely the situation for which the remedy was offered. You need a remedy because you chose loveless, and that's why the atonement was made. That's why it was offered, because you need it. The need for the remedy inspired the remedy's creation. You have a need for the remedy of fear. As long as you recognize only the need for the fear remedy, as long as you only recognize the need for your remedy, you will remain fearful. However, as soon as you remedy it, you will have abolished the fear. And that is how true healing occurs. Okay, so it's not enough just to go, yeah, I need correction for I need some correction for my fear. I need some correction. I know God need I know it. I need correction for my fear. But you don't then go accept the remedy. Then he says you'll stay afraid. As long as you just stay with I'm afraid, I'm so afraid, I'm afraid. As long as you just stay at the first step of know that this is an expression of fear. Wow.
So this takes me back to where I can choose with love instead of lovelessly.
Yes.
That was the problem. I chose without love.
Exactly.
So
So
the
the
remedy
remedy-
is getting love to choose with.
The remedy will be, I choose differently. I choose perfect love. Okay, now I'm going to choose something different. Now, in this moment, I choose perfect love. Perfect love, whatever that is, and perfect love for everyone, and perfect love for me, and perfect love of God, and whatever perfect love is, I choose it. That's accepting the remedy. You know, recognizing you need the remedy, yeah, that is the first part. But then making up your mind to accept the remedy.
Well, is that the big key, what you just said? Whatever perfect love is,
Exactly.
letting go of your outcome.
Exactly.
Because obviously you did not know the answer.
Absolutely.
And doing that will give you power in any situation.
That's exactly
Letting go.
right.
Realizing that you can do that.
That's exactly right. That you are always free to choose perfect love whenever you want it. Nothing can ever take that away from us. Ever. Nothing. Ever. Nothing. Not the biggest, baddest ego on the planet, or the galaxy, or the cosmos could take that freedom from us to say, yeah, this is fear, yeah, I did it to myself, and I chose lovelessly, I get that, I remember that, and now I ask for perfect love, and I offer perfect love in this situation, to this person, to myself. That's the remedy. And now then, you've abolished the fear, not moved it around, not put on different little outfits on it. Now you've abolished the fear. Wow. That's so beautiful. That is how true healing occurs. Well, how does true healing occur? You abolish your fear. Wow. By how? Recognizing where fear really came from, which is us being loveless, choosing not lovingly, and then choosing to love. Nothing will ever take away our freedom to choose that, which means in any situation we can experience a real deal miracle where we go, okay, that's fear, I chose it, I chose loveless, now I choose only perfect love. I choose perfect love, choose perfect love, perfect love, perfect love, perfect love. And then in an instant, the situation has been transformed into a miracle you could have never planned for yourself.
It said there, the miracle is an expression of, what was it an expression of?
The miracle as an expression of the remedy.
The remedy, thank
Yeah.
you.
The miracle is an aspect of the remedy. Oh, look, it's a miracle. Yes, well, that's an aspect of our remedy for you.
So probably, if it didn't seem a little miraculous, you probably didn't really get the remedy.
That's exactly right. Here's how you can recognize a miracle. When it happens, you realize, no, I didn't do that. Because a few minutes ago, I was insane. Going off and scheming and planning and plotting and defending. And then the next moment, it's only love. It's only abundance. It's only safety. I know I didn't do that.
Anna, it says in my book that it's the expression of the atonement. And you're calling it the remedy.
That's right.
Okay, so the atonement, of course, is that we're still living in the mind of God. And so are we just going back to that continuously, that what I'm really witnessing here isn't here. I still am in the mind of God where there is perfect love.
Yeah, my understanding of the atonement is of a plan. Like a plan that was very specially developed for our situation. Do you know what I mean? Like it was tailor-made to our situation of being split-minded and afraid and warmongers.
Right.
You know? And so I think of it more as a plan instead of just an awareness of the truth. Does that make sense?
And the plan is the situation that we're in right now.
No, the plan is the remedy from God. The plan by which to wake us back up. You know, but the plan has to come into the dream. It has to come into the dream in a physical kind of way, because we think we're bodies.
I see.
And that, so the atonement is the remedy the Spirit is working, you know, for whomever wants it. And that's what I think of as the atonement. And then I was saying remedy because in the earlier paragraph it goes the atonement or the remedy.
Right, and the plan is back to deciding that you are going to decide, and your decision is with Spirit.
Yes.
With Holy Spirit.
Exactly. Exactly. And to decide with Holy Spirit that all you really want is God's plan for your happiness. Whatever that is. Yeah, I love y'all's questions and your comments tonight. It's awesome. Appreciate talking to y'all. Yeah. It's nice, you know, when there's less people here, I notice I feel more comfortable to just talk to you. And I like that, just having a conversation. Thank you.
Well, it's quite a deal to try to take this real broad general stuff and then try to apply it to specific things like we've all been trying to do
Yes.
here.
Well, that's why the remedy can't be of us.
Yeah.
I can't figure out the mess I made. There's no way. I got too many problems. And they all seem totally different. And, you know, when some of them go down, other ones pop up. And when those go down, other ones pop up. I'll never be able to figure out the complex mess I've made. Where everything seems to be warring with each other. Everything seems to be conflicting each other. I know I couldn't do that. And so, but what I want to remember for myself tonight is that we have been given a remedy, and it's been done, it's been given. You know, all we have to do is take it. Like, yes, Mommy, thank you, and drink and take the remedy. You know, and the remedy is, are you willing to look at this and recognize that this is fear? Are you willing to do that? And then are you willing to see the truth that your fear came because you weren't choosing so lovingly recently? And then say, my fears come from my lack of love. So the correction of this situation would be perfect love. I choose perfect love.
Which is asking for correct perception.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the process of correction. That's the remedy that was given us. Here's a remedy. I'll spoon feed it to you, okay? So and that's what this is. That's Spirit going, is it okay if I spoon feed to you the remedy to all your ills? Is that all right? Would that be okay? And we're like, but the remedy, of course, if somebody's giving you a remedy, it's not going to be complex or difficult. It's going to be like, no strain, ta-da! God's will manifests in some form of no strain. No strain. How to recognize God's will, how to recognize God's answer, how to recognize God's plan. No strain. No strain, because that is what I want.
No strain with physical elements, no strain with financial problems, no strain with any relationships, no strain with everything that would be here in this body and in this dream.
Right. No strain wherever it is that you're certain that you only want God's plan in that situation. Then in that situation, there's no strain. I'm not in conflict. I say, hey, I know what I want to happen. I know what this is for. I'm not like trying to figure it out. No strain. I love it. The interesting connection between strain and fear. Strain and fear. Wow, that's deep. Okay, how are we doing on time? Wow. I actually thought it would be later. All right, you guys want some more? Yes? All right. Would you like me to spoon feed you some more? Pat's like, yeah, I would. Yeah, come on.
Yes,
come on with it.
Please.
Bring it on.
Come on with that spoon, Mama.
That's right.
Feed me some love.
Come to my class where I may spoon feed you. Come be fed, but spoon fed the course. All right. Okay, let's see. Where were we? All right. Everyone experiences fear, and no one enjoys it. I love that line. Isn't that funny? It's a funny thing to say. Everyone experiences fear, and nobody enjoys it, no matter how much they seem like they do. And then it says, yet it would take very little right thinking to realize why fear occurs. Why does fear occur? Why does fear occur? Well, very few people appreciate the real power of the mind. And no one remains fully aware of the power of the mind all the time. However, if anyone hopes to spare himself from more fear, there are some things they must realize and realize fully. If you would like to spare yourself more fear, there are some things that you must realize and realize fully. Do you want to avoid more fear? Do you want to spare yourself more fear? I want to spare myself more fear. I do. I've had plenty. I think I should get a break. I think I deserve a break. I've given myself plenty of fear. I would like to spare myself from fear. Okay, here's what I got to realize. I got to realize that the mind is very powerful. The mind is a very powerful creator. You need to realize, you must realize the mind is a very powerful creator. What does that mean? That means the mind never loses its creative force. The mind never loses its creative force. The mind never loses its creative force. It's a very powerful creator. Your mind never sleeps. The mind never sleeps. Isn't that interesting? He says this is what you've got to realize. If you're going to do what? If you're going to spare yourself more fear, you've got to realize that the mind is a very powerful creator. It never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Wow. Until you recognize that about the mind, until you realize that about the mind, then you're just going to be creating more fear, more fear, more fear, and drama, more fear, and more fear, and drama. Wow. Okay, so then, my mind is very powerful. My mind is a very powerful creator. My mind never loses its creative force. My mind never sleeps. That's what he's asking us to do, to remember, to realize tonight, to say to ourselves. This is because the mind, this is because every instant the mind is creating. And every instant the mind is creating always what you want, as you will, what you want. In every instant it's creating, and it's always creating what you want. In every instant it's creating, and it's always creating what you want. The mind is always creating every instant, and it's always creating what you want. You need to realize this about the mind if you would like to spare yourself more fear and drama. Wow. All right.
So when I'm choosing this fear is what they're telling me there.
Yes.
I'm locked into it.
I'm
Some part of
wanting
me wants it.
I'm wanting it. And that's to me the crucial piece for me tonight, is the choosing lovelessly is the same as saying, I didn't want love. I want it. I'm split in what I want. All right. Okay, so then it says, all right. Then it says, many of your ordinary expressions reflect this, this truth about the mind. For example, when you say, don't give it a thought, you imply that if you don't think about something, it will have no effect on you. And this is true enough. On the other hand, many other expressions clearly illustrate the prevailing lack of awareness of thought power. Now he says there's a prevailing lack of awareness of thought power. This awareness of thought, this unawareness, this lack of awareness of thought power, it's prevailing. It's common. This what? This lack of awareness of thought power. This lack of awareness of thought power is prevailing. I'll say.
Because all the time, every mind is either creating fears or creating love. That's what they just told us, wasn't it?
The mind is always creating either fear or love. That's it. And it's never not creating your fear or your love. Ever.
And if we're doing that all the time, it shouldn't surprise us that we're
Exactly.
quite often a little anxious.
and have erratic behavior occasionally. Yes, exactly. Yes, so in this prevailing lack of awareness of thought power, for example, you say, oh, that's just an idle thought, and mean that the thought has no effect. You also speak of some actions as, oh, that was just thoughtless, implying that if the person had thought, then they wouldn't have behaved as he did. While expressions like think big give some recognition to the power of thought, they still come nowhere near the truth. You don't expect to grow when you say think big, just because you don't really think that you will. In other words, it is hard to recognize that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally move mountains. Yes, that is hard to recognize. It is hard in this situation. It's hard to recognize that my thought and my belief could combine into a power surge that could literally move mountains, literally. Yes, that is hard to believe. That is what? Hard to recognize. Hard to recognize. I love that term, the lack of awareness of thought power. That's in the unedited version, but it's not in the edited version. Thought power. So I'm suffering from a lack of awareness of thought power. That's my problem, since you were asking. I'm experiencing a lack of awareness of thought power. I don't think I have any thought power. And I'm not using my thought power. And it's not about thought power. It's about them. It's about this situation. But I'm really experiencing a lack of awareness of thought power, meaning I'm undermining the power of my mind. I am not remembering my mind's power. And that's my problem.
My thoughts are making me afraid.
That's right, exactly. And that's what he goes on to say. He goes, let me see if we have time. Okay, just a little bit more. All right.
Thought power equals detaching yourself from your thoughts.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Thought power means you have power over your thoughts. You are choosing your thoughts instead of your thoughts appearing to think you. Thought power. But even in the ego, it's still total thought power. That's where the ego comes from. Thought power.
So, yeah, you think if you're wrong-minded, how much misery that can bring? In that regard, it's, the power of a thought bringing so much misery. So if you can just change your thought, then it could bring so much happiness if you're right-minded. So that's an example of thought power.
Amen to
So if
that.
they can bring so much misery, wow, if I just can think the right way or think right-mindedness, it could bring an amazing amount of
Exactly.
happiness.
Yes.
But we don't believe that.
Exactly, and then it goes on to tell us why. And I don't have time to go into it, so I'll just give you a little synopsis of what it goes on to say in answer to exactly what you said. So if a lack of awareness of thought power is our problem, it's what's keeping us in the strain and the conflict, then awareness of thought power is going to be our escape, our liberation, right? And he says, well, so why is it that we're afraid to recognize the power of our mind? The thing he says you've got to realize if you're ever going to be free of fear. Why is that? And that is because, so why is it that we would fear that? The reason that we would fear recognizing the real power of our minds is that we don't want our thoughts to have power. We are afraid of our thoughts. And so we would rather just see our thoughts as impotent. Sorry to use that word in a room full of men. But that we would prefer to see our thoughts and our thinking as powerless and just be the victim because we're afraid of our thoughts. And that is true. There are a lot of thoughts I have. Most of them, I really don't want to have power. I just thought about that. Right? And I'm so afraid of some of my thoughts, in particular the angry ones, the arrogant ones, the mean ones, the jealous ones, the lacking ones, the victim ones. I'm so afraid of them. I'm so afraid that I have those thoughts, that I really think like that, that I would rather see my mind as weak than really think that those thoughts have power. Wow, and come to be. So that's why we're afraid to do what the curriculum says to do, which was instruction. Must realize fully the power of your mind, the true creative power of your mind. And that's what we're doing here tonight. We're doing what it said to do. We're realizing and recognizing that our mind is truly powerful. It's a constantly creative force. It never sleeps. And it's always creating what we want. So that's what we're asked to realize about the mind tonight, and that's what we're doing. All right. So now we're going to do our love offering and our integration meditation. Thank you guys for being here tonight. And thank you guys for speaking up tonight. I love hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, because those murderous thoughts are not okay. And we have to decide that, in that we can choose love, we can choose perfect love instead. And
Yes.
we can ask for another source just as soon as they come up, don't you think?
Exactly, that's when we need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, when they come up. Exactly.
So we're afraid of our self, we're afraid of our thoughts, and ultimately we get afraid of ourselves because we realize we're choosing our thoughts.
Exactly. So if I have fearful thoughts that I haven't brought to the light, I'm just projecting and hiding, then I'm going to be somebody who's going to be terrified of the mind. I'll be terrified of it. It just scares me, right? Because part of me knows the real power of the mind. Part of me knows, and I have all those thoughts, I don't want to have power. I don't want them to be real. I don't want that to be the truth about me. But the only way to correct those beliefs, those ideas that I have, those thoughts, the only way to correct them is higher willing. The only way to correct them is to speak the truth to them. This is only fear. This is fear. This is an expression of fear. This is an expression of lovelessness.
You think forgiveness comes in there somewhere?
I think that is.
That is forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Forgiveness. Forgiveness as an expression of perfect love.
So you would forgive yourself for having those thoughts, and then you would ask the Holy Spirit to help you with your next thought, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a great idea. Ask for the correction, receive it, and then ask for the next one.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's do our integration meditation. All right. All right, so just allow your awareness to be directed inward, drawing your awareness inward into some calm center. And just for a moment, feel. Beautiful, and I want you to bring to your awareness a situation in which you have been experiencing fear or conflict or strain. And then I want you to tell yourself, this is fear. This is fear. And then I want you to say, fear arises from lack of love. Fear arises from lack of love. And I want you to look within for a moment and see if you can see where it was that you made that loveless choice, that choice to somehow not to love. Was it to yourself? Was it to another? And we're not going to stay with the loveless choice. Then we're immediately going to ask for and accept the remedy for that. In Spirit, I ask for the remedy for that loveless choice, that choice to not love them, that choice to not love myself. I ask for the remedy. And then tell yourself the only remedy for your lack of love is your perfect love. The only remedy for my lack of love is perfect love. And tell yourself that. And then I want you to notice that the choice for perfect love is the remedy. So then we become single-minded in what we want, and we say, perfect love is the remedy. I decide upon perfect love. And become single-minded on that. Make up your mind about that. All I want is the remedy of perfect love in this situation right now. We are choosing perfect love as the remedy. I choose only love for all involved. I choose only peace for all involved. I extend only perfect acceptance to all involved. I offer perfect love in this holy instant, whatever that is. I offer unconditional acceptance because I want the remedy. And then just see what happens after you pray that prayer, after you work that formula. Who is it that you have been fearing? In this holy instant, send them perfect love. Choose for perfect love for them. And now extend that perfect love to yourself. I am decided. I only offer myself perfect love. I am decided. I have made up my mind to offer myself only perfect love in this holy instant now. And just feel what that feels like. Feel what it feels like to even just practice choosing perfect love, offering perfect love. What does it feel like? Where's the strain now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes it is, yes dear, very deep for me, yes. I appreciate you guys.
I'm ready for straight vacation.
Some what?
Straight vacation.